I never thought I'd be sitting here telling a story like this, but here I am. My name's Jason, and I used to believe I had everything figured out with my wife, Lisa. We'd been married for about 7 years, and honestly, I thought we had a good thing going, or at least I did. She was the typical fiery, sharp-tongued woman you'd expect, bitchy at times, yes, but fiercely loyal. Or so I thought. We had our ups and downs, but nothing that felt insurmountable. The first signs of trouble started when she began acting strangely. She'd come home from work later than usual, claiming she was just staying behind to finish some project or meet a client. I noticed her phone buzzing constantly, but she'd always hide it or mute it when I entered the room. That should have been a red flag, but I brushed it off. Maybe she was just busy, maybe she was stressed. I didn't want to overthink things yet. Then came the little things. The way she'd dress differently when she went out, the late-night texts she'd quickly hide when I got close, and her suddenly being too busy to have sex. She'd always come up with some excuse like she was too tired or just not in the mood. But I could see that her eyes looked different, more distant, less connected. It felt like she was hiding something. Still, I didn't want to assume the worst without proof. I kept telling myself that maybe I was just paranoid, that maybe I was reading too much into her behavior. One night, I came home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. That's when I stumbled across something that threw my entire world into chaos. I found her phone, unlocked on the couch, open to a folder labeled Memories. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I saw it: pictures. Lots of pictures. Not just of us, not just of family events, but intimate ones. Her with another man. Smiling, touching, close. I saw the way her eyes looked in some of them, more passionate than I'd ever seen. My heart sank. The worst part: the pictures weren't recent, they were from last month. I checked the timestamps and tried to piece together what I'd missed. How could I have missed this? How did I not see this coming? The feeling of betrayal washed over me like a tidal wave. I felt sick, furious, crushed. All the little signs, the late nights, the secretive texts, they all made sense now. And the worst part, I knew she'd been manipulating this entire situation, editing the record of our shared life, our memories like a damn archive, selectively emphasizing moments without me and minimizing my role in everything. I didn't confront her right away. I just sat there, staring at the screen, trying to process what I'd just discovered. My mind raced with questions. How long has this been going on? Was I just some placeholder? Was I even really part of her story anymore? I felt like I was losing myself, and at the same time, I knew I had to face her. I had to ask her what the hell was going on. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache, but I knew I wouldn't be able to avoid it forever. When Lisa woke up and started her usual bullshit, I decided I'd finally confront her. I told her I knew about the pictures, about the secret folder on her phone, about the whole damn thing. Her reaction was classic Lisa: raised eyebrows, that defiant smirk, and a quick lie about how it was nothing, just some art project or memories she was saving for herself. She said she was just looking at old photos, that I was overreacting, that I didn't understand her. But I knew better. I saw the way she looked at me then, like I was an obstacle, like I was just a guy she was pretending was her husband. That moment cemented it for me. This wasn't just about some affair. It was about her rewriting our past, manipulating the story we'd shared. It felt like I'd been erased from her memories and replaced with someone else. I couldn't just let this go. I had to do something. I had to get to the bottom of it, even if I didn't know what I was really going to do yet. And that's when I started plotting my revenge, but I didn't know what that really looked like just yet. All I knew was that I couldn't let her get away with this, not without a fight. After the initial shock and anger started to settle a bit, I knew I had to act, but I wasn't about to jump into anything rash. I needed more evidence, a way to confirm what I suspected without her catching on. So I started digging deeper. If she was cheating on me, I figured she'd be careless sooner or later, or at least I'd find something more concrete. I began paying closer attention to her habits, her late-night phone calls, her secretive messages. I even installed a keylogger on her laptop, not because I wanted to be a creep, but because I needed to see what she was hiding. It was sickening, honestly, but I felt I had no choice. The truth was out there, hiding behind a veil of lies. I just had to peel it back. It didn't take long before I found what I was looking for. Not long after, her email notifications started popping up. Other than the usual work stuff, there were messages from some guy named Jake. She was talking to him about her day, about how much she missed the way he looked at her, how she felt alive with him. She was blatantly cheating, and she didn't even bother hiding it. It was like she wanted me to find out, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. That moment hit me like a punch in the gut. I'd always thought I was enough, that I was the one she loved. And now I was staring at proof that she'd been sneaking around with some guy, secretly sharing moments, exchanging flirtations, probably even sex. I felt a surge of rage and heartbreak at the same time. It was a cocktail of emotion I'd never experienced before: confusion, betrayal, humiliation. I was planning my next move when I stumbled upon something even more disturbing. As I went through her emails, I found a hidden folder on her cloud storage called Memories. That's when I realized she wasn't just cheating physically, but was also actively editing the story of our life together. The folder had pictures, videos, and notes, some from our wedding, our vacations, our milestones. But it was all edited. Selective moments highlighted, others erased, as if she was trying to craft a version of our story that excluded me entirely. That was the moment I knew she'd been manipulating our shared past, rewriting what we'd built. The realization made my stomach turn. She wasn't just cheating on me physically, she was erasing me from her memories, from the record of our life together. I felt sick knowing my entire history with her was being edited behind my back. It was like she was creating her own version of reality, one where I didn't matter, where I was just some placeholder she could discard whenever she wanted. At that point, I knew I couldn't stay quiet. I couldn't let her keep lying and rewriting our story. I needed to confront her again, not just about the affair, but about the manipulation of our memories. I planned to catch her off guard, to force her to face what she'd done. I waited until she came home late again, then I brought her into the living room and laid everything out, showed her the evidence, the emails, the hidden folders, the photos. Her reaction was immediate and vicious. She looked at me with such contempt, like I was the crazy one. "You're overreacting," she spat. "It's just some guy from work, nothing serious. You're paranoid. You always blow things out of proportion." She lied so effortlessly I almost believed her for a second. She tried to turn it around, making it seem like I was the one jealous, insecure, crazy. She said I was possessive and controlling for wanting to see the evidence. But I wasn't stupid. I saw through her lies. I saw the way she was trying to gaslight me, dismissing everything that proved she'd been unfaithful and manipulating our shared history. The betrayal wasn't just about her cheating physically. It was about her rewriting our story, erasing my role, and making me doubt myself. That night, I sat alone and stared at the screen where all her secret files, pictures, and notes were stored. My mind was racing. What the hell do I do now? Do I stay and try to fix this? Do I confront her again and demand answers? Do I just pack up and leave? The pain was overwhelming, but beneath it all there was a sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't keep living in her edited version of reality. If I was going to do anything, it had to be on my terms, exposing her, or maybe even walking away entirely. I guess I was in that space where I felt paralyzed, caught between heartbreak and rage. The thing that gnawed at me the most, what kept me up at night, was knowing she'd been rewriting the story of us behind my back. All the moments I thought were ours, she had been editing and censoring. That realization made me furious. I was starting to think about revenge, not just the kind of revenge that comes from confronting her, but the kind that would make her feel what she'd done to me, what she'd erased. But I wasn't stupid enough to rush into that. I needed a plan. I needed to think about what I actually wanted, what would hurt her most, and what I could live with. I knew I'd have to be careful, because if she was willing to lie and cheat openly, she'd probably be capable of anything. I just didn't know how far she was willing to go, or if I was ready for what that would ultimately mean. So I kept collecting evidence, kept my mind sharp, and waited for the right moment to strike. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that I couldn't just confront her with some angry outburst and hope it all blows over. That wouldn't work. She had built her own version of our life, and I needed to do something smarter, something that would really shake her. I started researching ways to expose someone like her, who was good at hiding her tracks and manipulating her story. I needed her to see that her carefully curated memories and lies wouldn't protect her anymore. I decided I'd need outside help, someone who could help me reveal the truth in a way she wouldn't be able to spin or dismiss. I reached out to an old friend, a private investigator I knew from work. I explained everything: her cheating, the editing of our shared memories, the secret folders, the emails from Jake. I told him I wanted to catch her in the act, but more than that, I wanted her to understand that I knew everything. I didn't want some half-assed proof. I wanted her to feel the weight of her lies. He agreed to help, but warned me it'd cost a bit. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted justice, or at least some clarity. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched her every move, coordinated with my pie, and waited for her to do something stupid. It was agonizing living in this limbo, but I knew I had to be patient. I couldn't rush this. And then it happened. One night she slipped up. She went out supposedly for a girls' night, but I found out she wasn't alone. My pie caught her in a bar with Jake, holding hands, kissing, clearly more than just friends. I couldn't believe it, but I also knew this was the moment I'd been waiting for. I had the proof now, the tangible evidence of her betrayal and her willingness to lie and manipulate her life and our memories. I was torn between relief and rage. Relief because now I had undeniable proof. Rage because she'd lied to my face all this time, convinced me I was crazy. That night was a wake-up call. I realized just how deep her deception went, how far she'd gone to rewrite our story. The next day, I sat her down. I showed her the photos and videos from the bar, told her I knew about Jake, and that I'd seen her manipulating our memories. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, trying to dismiss everything. "You're overreacting," she said again. "It's just sex, Jason. It doesn't mean anything. I'm not some cheating slut. You're paranoid." But I didn't buy it, her defiance only fueled my anger. I told her I didn't want to hear her lies anymore, that I was done playing her game. I said I was sick of her manipulating our past and hiding the truth. I told her she could keep lying if she wanted, but I knew the real story and I was done pretending otherwise. That's when she finally snapped. She started shouting, calling me crazy, accusing me of stalking her, of being jealous and insecure. She accused me of trying to control her life, as if I was the one manipulating everything. But I wasn't going to let her gaslight me anymore. I stood there, calm but firm, telling her she'd crossed a line, that I saw her real face now. The shock of it all hit her hard. She tried to deny everything, but I had the proof. Nothing she said could undo what I knew. And deep down, I think she realized her perfect little story was falling apart. I could see it in her eyes, the flicker of panic, of regret, of knowing she'd lost control. That day marked a turning point. I told her I needed some space, that we'd talk again when I was ready. I knew that was the beginning of the end for us. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. On one hand, I'd finally uncovered the truth. On the other, I was painfully aware that our marriage was already broken beyond repair. In the aftermath, I started thinking about what I really wanted, whether to fight for this marriage or walk away for good. I realized that her rewriting our memories was the biggest betrayal of all. She erased me from her past, and I had to decide if I still wanted to be part of her story or if I was better off just rewriting my own. I stayed silent for days, trying to figure out my next move. The anger was still there, but so was the sadness, deep and raw. What I learned from all of this is that people can hide a lot behind a pretty face and a manipulative smile. They can rewrite memories, twist truths, and lie convincingly. But ultimately, the truth has a way of coming out, no matter how carefully you try to hide it. And when it does, it changes everything. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing: I won't be erased or manipulated anymore. The days that followed that confrontation were a blur of mixed emotions. I felt like I'd been hit by a train, yet somehow also lighter. The weight of her lies and manipulation had finally lifted, but the pain of realizing her betrayal cut just as deep. I kept replaying everything in my mind: how she'd lied so convincingly, how she'd rewrote our memories, how she'd made me doubt myself. It was like waking up from a nightmare, but the scars stayed. I decided I couldn't stay under the same roof and pretend everything was okay. No matter how much I wanted to fix things, I knew I couldn't rebuild trust with someone who'd gone this far to erase me from her life. So, I started planning my next move, how to get out, how to protect myself from her lies, and how to finally take control of my own story. I told her I was leaving, that I needed some time and space to figure out what I wanted, and that I wouldn't be around to see her continue her manipulations. She was furious, of course. The bitchy smirk returned and she started screaming at me, calling me all sorts of names, crazy, controlling, jealous, that kind of thing. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was abandoning her when she needed me most, but I didn't care. I'd had enough of her bullshit. I knew I had to cut ties, at least temporarily, to get some clarity. Packing my things was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Every item I took felt like a statement, like I was reclaiming my life, my truth, my dignity. I left her with the house. I knew she'd probably try to manipulate her way back into my good graces, but I refused to play that game. I was done being the fool in her carefully crafted narrative. I wanted to start over somewhere new, away from the lies and the memories she'd edited. The moment I moved out, I felt a surge of relief mixed with heartbreak. I hated the idea of walking away from everything we'd built, but I knew I couldn't stay in a marriage where I was being erased. I wasn't going to be her background, her prop in her manipulated story anymore. I decided I'd focus on healing myself, on rebuilding my sense of identity that she tried so hard to destroy. But this wasn't just about physical separation. A part of me knew I had to confront the bigger picture, that her editing of our memories was a symptom of her deeper manipulative nature. It wasn't just about infidelity, it was about control, about rewriting reality so she could have power over me and our supposed family. That realization made me even more determined to make her see that her actions had consequences. In the quiet of my new place, I started reflecting on what I'd learned. I saw how easy it is for someone to present a perfect image while secretly hiding a darker truth. I learned that trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired, if it can be repaired at all. I also learned that sometimes the best revenge is just walking away, refusing to be part of someone's twisted version of reality. I didn't contact her for a while, but she kept trying to reach out, of course. She'd send texts, pretending to be remorseful, acting like she'd changed, like she missed us. That made me angry. She thought she could just manipulate her way back into my life like nothing had happened, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew what she was capable of, and I wasn't going to fall for her bullshit. Deep down, I think she realized she'd lost control, that her manipulations couldn't undo what had been exposed. I could see it in her messages, less confident, more desperate. That's when I started imagining the revenge I'd play out, not in a malicious way, but as a way to make her understand how deeply she'd hurt me and how much she'd lost. So I began to plan a quiet but impactful way to turn the tables. I thought about exposing her manipulations, showing everyone what she'd done, not just to me but to herself. I wanted her to feel the shame, the guilt, the loss of control. I wanted her to see that her lies had consequences, and that her carefully curated story was crumbling. It's strange how, in the midst of all this chaos, I've started to see clearer. I realized that her betrayal was about her own insecurities, her need for control, her desire to rewrite herself into a better story, one where she's the hero, not the wife who's been replaced. But I also see that I don't need her version of the story anymore. I can write my own. I can build something new, something genuine without her lies shadowing me. The hardest part is accepting that I'll never get the moments she erased back, the real ones, the honest ones. But I've come to understand that sometimes the only way to heal is to let go of the past and focus on what's next. It's painful, sure, but it's also freeing. I'm learning to trust myself again, to rebuild my life on my own terms. And one thing, for sure, she'll never manipulate or erase me again. The weeks turned into months and I kept my distance. It wasn't easy. Every time I saw her name pop up on my phone, I felt a surge of anger mixed with sadness. But I knew I had to stay strong for myself. I stayed busy, focused on work, on reconnecting with friends I'd lost touch with, on building new routines. I realized that I'd been living in her shadow, trying to prove myself to her, to earn her love, her approval. But she had been rewriting our story, and I was finally done being part of that fiction. Part of me still wondered if she'd ever truly face what she'd done. I didn't want her to just apologize and move on. I wanted her to understand how much damage she caused, not just to me but to what we once had. I wanted her to realize the extent of her manipulation, her lying, her erasing of our shared life. But I wasn't naive enough to think that would happen easily, or even at all. Some people don't change, especially those who think they can rewrite everything to serve their own needs. And so I began to carefully craft my own plan, a way to make her see that her actions had consequences. I didn't want revenge in the traditional sense, but I did want her to understand that her lies and manipulations couldn't be hidden forever. I started leafing through the evidence I'd gathered, organizing everything. The emails, the photos, the videos from the bar with Jake, the hidden folders, each piece a fragment of her true self. I knew I had to be smart. If I exposed everything at once, it might backfire, and she'd just deny everything or turn it around on me. What I did was wait for the right moment, when she'd least expect it. I knew she'd try to spin it again, deny the evidence, or even accuse me of stalking her or invading her privacy. So I prepared a detailed timeline, a presentation of all her manipulations, and I compiled it into a file, something I could show her, or perhaps share with others if it came to that. I wanted her to see her own reflection in her lies. I wanted her to realize that her carefully constructed illusion was cracking, and her house of cards was about to fall. In the meantime, I started to focus on myself. I enrolled in therapy to process everything: the betrayal, the pain, the loss of trust. I also started taking care of my health again, going to the gym, eating better, reconnecting with hobbies I'd abandoned. I realized that I'd spent so much time trying to keep her happy, trying to be what she wanted, that I'd lost sight of myself. Now I was rebuilding, piece by piece, stronger and more aware. One day I received a message from her that caught me completely off guard. She texted me, saying she was sorry for everything, that she knew she'd hurt me and that she wanted to make amends. I read it and felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. Sorry, after everything she'd done. Sorry doesn't fix the fact that she'd been lying, cheating, and erasing my place in our shared history. Sorry doesn't undo the manipulation of our memories or the betrayal I found out about just a few months ago. I didn't reply. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. I knew she was just trying to manipulate her way back into my life, to get me to forgive her so she could continue her game. But I also knew that I was done chasing that version of us. I'd come too far to go back now. I wanted to move forward, away from her lies, her manipulations, her rewriting of our past. I realized I didn't need her apology. I needed her to understand that I was no longer part of her story. The truth is, I've started to feel more like myself again, even if the scars remain. I've learned that trust is fragile, and that some people will do everything in their power to destroy it if they think they can get away with it, but I've also learned that you don't have to stay in the wreckage. You can pick yourself up, rebuild, and define your own story without the lies. I've accepted that I can't change her, but I can change how I react. I can choose to walk away, or I can choose to stand my ground and expose her for what she truly is. I guess what I want to say to anyone who's been through something similar is this: don't ignore the signs. Don't let yourself be manipulated into believing the version of reality someone else wants you to see. If you suspect something's wrong, dig deeper. Gather evidence. Protect yourself emotionally and physically, because in the end, the truth will surface. And when it does, you'll realize that your worth isn't tied to someone else's lies or manipulations. It's rooted in your strength to face the truth and walk away if you have to. That's what I'm trying to do now: walk away from her rewritten story and write my own. The final step wasn't easy, actually. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I knew I had to seal this chapter completely, not just for myself but to make sure she understood she couldn't manipulate her way back into my life. I gathered all the evidence I had: screenshots, emails, videos, everything that proved her duplicity. And I made a plan to confront her one last time, not with anger but with a clear message. I knew the truth, and I was done playing her game. I met her at a neutral place, some coffee shop she hated, but it was the only place I thought she'd be forced to face reality. I sat across from her, calm but resolute, and laid everything out on the table. I showed her the photos from the bar, the emails from Jake, the memories she'd been editing, the lies she'd spun. I told her I knew everything, how she'd been manipulating our past, deliberately erasing me, rewriting her story to suit herself. I looked her in the eyes and told her she'd lost me, not just because of her cheating, but because of her betrayal, her dishonesty, her complete disregard for the truth. Her face twisted with anger and defiance. She tried her usual tricks, denials, accusations, guilt trips. "You're crazy," she said. "You're just jealous. I didn't do anything wrong. You're overreacting because you're insecure." But I didn't flinch. I had everything right there, proof that she'd lied, manipulated, and betrayed me. I told her I didn't want her apologies, her excuses, or her tears. I just wanted her to see that I knew the real her, the one who'd hidden behind layers of lies and deception. When she realized I wasn't going to buy into her bullshit, her demeanor shifted. She sat there quietly for a moment, eyes darting around, trying to find a way out. But there was no escaping the truth I'd laid bare. I made it clear I was done, that I'd moved on emotionally, and that her attempts to manipulate me further would be useless. I told her I was reclaiming my life, my memories, and my future, without her rewriting or erasing me again. She tried one last time to twist things around, to make me feel guilty, to make me doubt myself. But I'd already made my decision. I told her that I hoped she'd learn from her mistakes, that she'd understand how damaging her lies had been, not just to me, but to herself. I said I didn't hate her, but I couldn't stay and pretend that everything was okay anymore. I told her I was walking away for good, finally freeing myself from her manipulation. When I left that day, it was like shedding a heavy weight I'd carried for months. I felt a strange mixture of relief, strength, and sadness. Part of me mourned the loss of what I thought we had, but another part knew that staying would only continue her cycle of lies and control. I realized that sometimes your biggest act of love is to let go of the false stories, the illusions, the manipulation, and the pain. Now, I'm rebuilding my life on my own terms. I'm focusing on healing, on trusting myself again, and on creating honest memories with the people who truly matter. The betrayal taught me a hard lesson, that people can manipulate your perception of reality, but the truth is resilient. It's always there waiting to surface, no matter how well it's hidden or distorted. Looking back, I see clearly that her actions weren't just about infidelity. They were about control, about rewriting her version of the story to suit her. But I don't need her version anymore. I'm writing my own now, unfiltered and real. The pain will always be there, but so will my strength. And in the end, that's what matters. I learned that no matter how deep the betrayal, the truth will set you free, if you're brave enough to face it.